You're here because you know Jim Rogan and you admire what he's done and you know something about his background. If you want to do early background, you have to read the book Rough Edges, which I think many of you probably have. We premiered it here when it first came out. It's about his life from welfare to Washington. And it's fascinating because he has endured a tough life, which he all of a sudden said, this isn't for me, and picked himself up and dusted himself off and went on to be very successful in public service. He's a good friend of ours. He first met Richard Nixon because he has an obsession with presidential and political memorabilia. And I'm not kidding, it's an obsession. I won't let his wife get up and talk about how much of that's in the garage in boxes, or Judge Fish talk about how much of it's in his office, probably, or how much of it is all over his home. But he's been kind enough to share a lot of it with us, and we have much of it on display here. But that's when he first met Richard Nixon as a young man, and he'll probably tell you a little bit about that. But he's a neighbor. The Rogans live here in Yorba Linda, and he was a member of our board for quite some time before he went on the bench in 2 or 3 years ago. But his life and in public service and in the legal profession began in '83 when he graduated from law school. He was a practicing attorney, very successful in private legal practice. He was deputy DA in Los Angeles. He was the youngest municipal court judge elected, serving in Glendale. He went on to be a congressman. You know him as a congressman. He also served as Undersecretary of Commerce in Washington after serving as congressman, and he was head of our patent office. And then he came back here and did some private practice, and he was drafted into the judiciary, where he now serves. He's done not only Rough Edges, which was a fascinating book about his life, but he's done Catching Our Flag, which you're here to hear about. And that book deals with his assignment as one of the principal managers to help on the prosecution of the President Clinton a few years ago. He kept copious notes and has never really, I don't think, talked about it publicly, but decided to commit his memory and his notes to a book just for archives and for the sake of history. So you're here to hear about that, and it's my pleasure to introduce him, Congressman James Rogan.
Thank you, sir. Sandy, thank you. Sandy and I are old friends. I've known him for over 20 years. A special thanks to all of my friends here at the Nixon Library and Foundation for hosting this. For those of us that live in North Orange County, in fact, anywhere in Southern California, you know what a great resource, a tremendous resource that the Nixon Library is. The number of programs they put on for kids, the number of free things that they do. And I'm especially grateful for all the volunteer docents that work here, and some of them are here tonight. Can we have a round of applause for all of these people that do such a great job? And if you allow me a moment, as we used to say in Congress, a point of personal privilege. If I were going through all of the introductions that I would like to do, I would burn up all of my time. But suffice to say, I have a number of dear friends and family, colleagues from the bench. I have to introduce the judges that I see, because when a judge pays $8 for a ticket and they don't get introduced, you never hear the end of it. My colleague, Judge Stanford from the Superior Court, Rick. And Judge Craig Griffin, my other colleague from the Superior Court, Craig. And a special love and thanks and affection for people that worked on my assembly and my congressional staff that are here as well. I wasn't going to talk too much about this, but since Sandy gave me the introduction, I will. Richard Nixon played indirectly a very important role in my young life. I grew up in San Francisco in this very blue-collar, low-income family, and of course we were all Union Democrats there. If there was ever a Republican in San Francisco, I never met one. But I was this total political junkie. I loved history, government, and politics. And so in 1972, when President Nixon was running for re-election, I was only 14 years old. And I get this thing in the mail that says, we have this group called Young Voters for the President. And if you are between the ages of 18 and 40, that was young, you can pay for $240. We will put you on a charter plane. We'll fly you to Miami Beach for the Republican National Convention, hotel, food, everything paid for, and you can get into the convention. And I had $240 saved up from side jobs. I was 14. I learned at a very early age it's far better to ask forgiveness than ask permission. So I walked down to the local 7-Eleven. I got a money order for $240. I sent it in. And when my mom came home later, I said, here's the thing. I'm going to Miami Beach by myself for a week. I said, I'm 14. I'm going to get on this airplane. I'm going to fly to Miami from California. I'm going to spend a whole week there and then probably come home at the end of the week. And my mother said, you're 14. You can't do that. You can't go 3,000 miles away all by yourself with no parental supervision. And I said, Mom, I'm going to be with 20,000 Republicans. How much trouble can I get into? And she said, you're right, you can go. So I had this impression, I must be honest, I had this impression of Republicans. Stiff, staid, no fun, and I thought this is really going to just be 20,000 boring people. I'm going to get on this plane, but I will have a chance to go collect lots and lots of political memorabilia for my collection. So I take this plane down to LAX where they have this holding area. Then at midnight, they put us on a charter plane, and it's just filled up with young voters for the president. I had never been on a charter plane before. I learned that when you get on a charter plane of 18 to 40-year-olds, there is no waiting for the pilot to say, we are now at our cruising altitude, you can get out of your seats. That plane was not 10 seconds in the air. Everybody was out of their seats. They made a beeline for the liquor cabinet. They started passing out booze all over this plane within minutes. All these people are dancing, drinking, and having this big party, and I'm taking all this in as a kid, trying to look as old and mature as possible. The only person who wasn't that way was my seatmate. This woman, I'm going to put her at about 28 or so. She was sitting with me, and she was right out of central casting if you were looking for school marm. Hair in a bun, very, buttoned up and everything. But somebody offered her a glass of wine, and she took it, and then another, and another. And as we're flying for hours, she started complaining, it's getting really hot on this airplane. The bun came out of her hair, and the buttons started getting unbuttoned, and I'm going to guess we were somewhere over Salina, Kansas, when she's looking at me after about 12 drinks, and she said, you're a really nice guy. You seem like you're easy to talk to. Can I tell you a secret? I said, sure. She said, I have a personality disorder. That piqued my interest. I said, what is it? She said, I'm a nymphomaniac. Now, I must tell you, as one who was educated in the public schools of the San Francisco Bay Area, I did not know much geometry, but I knew what that meant. And she looked at me and she said, how old are you? And I said, 37. So the point of this is, from that experience, going to Miami Beach, seeing President Nixon renominated for a second term as president almost 40 years ago, I came home and learned a very valuable lesson that in America there truly is a vibrant two-party system, and San Francisco Democrats should not be so narrow-minded. Anyway. All right, I guess I should move on to the subject that I'm here to talk about, and it is my book. And I want to make a preliminary observation. and it is this. There is a fellow named Bob Packwood, who is a former United States Senator. And Bob Packwood, in my opinion, nothing personal, is very